Hey, welcome back to America's Forum here on Newsmax TV. We're going to rejoin Elliot Jager right now, who's on the phone with us from Jerusalem. And Elliot's been giving us a on-the-ground assessment of what's taking place right now. Elliot, I wanted to go back to that report you mentioned earlier, the four youths in Gaza that were killed as a result of that Israeli airstrike. That's sinking in now also, but also reports of the first Israeli to be killed as a result of the most recent rocket fire here. So clearly things are not de-escalating.
John, if you can hear that, that was just another rocket, actually, another warning of another rocket just coming in, this time coming into the Sderot area. At any rate, things are definitely not winding down. Let me give you a sense of what's happening on the home front here. There has been throughout the day and throughout the evening, I would call it regular bombardment. But I, for example, drove from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv and to Herzliya yesterday, and that was uneventful. But my colleague did something really similar, drove the same route, and he had to pull over because there was a siren of an incoming rocket, and everybody gets out of their car. We did, in fact, have the first death of a civilian. But that particular incident is being investigated. He was actually volunteering to distribute sort of food and goodies to the soldiers near Gaza, and it's not clear he was authorized. So it's a real tragedy. That's a real tragedy. We have the summer school holidays, so obviously kids are being cooped up. And on the other hand, really life goes on in many ways. Israelis are resilient. You have the siren, you do your thing, you get away from the trouble, and then you come back out and you go back to your cafe, you go back to work, you go back to doing what you got to do.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear folks like yourself, talk in a very calm way while warnings for rocket attacks are going off. I mean, the closest thing we can compare that to here in this country, fortunately, is when you hear a tornado siren or something like that. But to hear this is a human caused tragedy, I guess we could say.
John, the folks in the area closest to Gaza have actually suffered the most because they have their lives. I know kids who are just turning 12 and 13 years old who do not know life without the siren and the warning of incoming. It's just amazing, and they even managed to carry on with their lives. Well, God knows what trauma permanent trauma they've suffered.
Yeah, certainly. And again, you mentioned the build-up, the Israeli military calling up more troops here, looking like there might be some kind of incursion into Gaza as the necessity continues to grow more and more apparent of the need to get into some of these tunnels and some of these covert places that Hamas militants are using to launch these rocket attacks. Again, as we hear more reports of civilian casualties in this, a couple ways to look at this. We know that Hamas in the past has used civilians as shields, if you will, for their military installments. But, that's certainly not something that's lost on the Israeli government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as they try to prevent civilian deaths in a very obvious way, dropping those leaflets, sending out phone calls, reverse phone calls, and text messages to the folks in Gaza.
Right, but John, as you know, this is not some sort of computer game. In real war, real people get killed no matter what you try to do to stop that. And by the way, I should just mention that Netanyahu has been pushing for demilitarization of Gaza. Because as you know, if there's to be a Palestinian state, and you can think of Gaza as a sort of prototype of a Palestinian state, it has to be militarized. The Palestinians have actually theoretically agreed to that. The international community has explicitly agreed to that. And so Netanyahu is saying, really, it's not just Israel's problem. If the international community wants to go ahead with a two-state solution, and Gaza is going to be part of that two-state solution, Gaza has to be demilitarized.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do, and Hamas remains the problem. But Elliot Jager, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us here from Jerusalem live here on America's Forum today. Of course, Newsmax TV continues with more coverage on today's top events. Ed Berliner joins us with Midpoint right after this.